Welcome to our segment on heavy forwarders. In the previous segment, we talked about light forwarders. Now we want to talk about heavy forwarders. And why are heavy forwarders important? Because we can do heavy lifting at the source. We can index and parse data, we can load balance, and we can define specific data routing rules. You can clearly see how this could be extremely useful in a highly distributed environment. Do not be turned off by the terminology of a heavy forwarder. It's really just a regular installation of Splunk, the same installation you would use for an indexer or search head. The only difference is once you're done installing it, you go to Settings, Licensing, Change License Group, and you click that radio button that says Forwarder License. Once you install a heavy forwarder, it's pretty easy to set up. You just simply go to Settings, Forwarding and Receiving, and Add New under Forward Data. Once you click Add New, you'll come to this screen where it asks for either a DNS name or an IP plus a port of the indexer or search head to which you want to forward. If you want Splunk to automatically load balance the data to multiple indexers, you can simply list multiple indexers here, separated by commas. You can also save a copy of the data locally. If you go to Forwarding Defaults, it will ask you if you want to store a local copy of the forwarded events. You can choose yes or no there. You can probably think of some use cases in which you would want to store a local copy of the events and some in which you would not. If this particular machine is pretty lightweight and doesn't have a lot of storage, you may not want to store a copy of forwarded events on the machine locally. So let's talk about some basic differences between universal and heavy forwarders. Universal forwarders, remember, are the light agent. There's event parsing available at the source in some cases, but no event routing available on universal forwarders. Heavy forwarders are a full Splunk enterprise installation, and we can parse and route data at the source with heavy forwarders. Let's take a look at how to install and configure a heavy forwarder in a Windows and a Linux environment. And by the way, when we do the Windows environment, the reason I'm not doing Mac environments is because it's exactly the same as the Windows environment, except you'll download a DMG file instead of an MSI file. As always, we have our 3 stars of the show here. We have our Splunk search head, our Windows Splunk forwarder, and in the terminal, we have our Ubuntu server that we can set up as a forwarder. So first of all, let's log into our search head. I've actually uninstalled the light forwarders on these other machines, so there won't be data coming in until we actually install the heavy forwarders. So for fun, let's start with Linux. And again, we want to open a browser on any machine and get that wget string, just like we did to install Splunk Enterprise in the first place. So we'll simply go to splunk.com, click on the free Splunk button, choose Splunk Enterprise, and we're going to choose Linux. And again, I like to use the TGZ. I'm going to click Download Now, but remember, I'm not actually downloading it. Of course, it's going to make us log in, and we'll cancel the download because we just want this wget string. Click here to select the entire string. And once again, we will make sure it's there. There's our old forwarder tarball that we downloaded. And there's our Splunk Enterprise instance that we just barely downloaded that does not have the word forwarder in it. So let's copy that again to opt. And remember, on Linux, that's where Splunk likes to live. So sudo cp, and then we'll navigate to opt, make sure it's there, and it is. And then we'll simply untar it. Alright, it created that Splunk directory for us. And remember, we're going to go to bin, and we're going to tell Splunk to start. And to do that, we'll simply go sudo Splunk start, and let's do the -- accept license switch so that we don't have to read that horribly long end user license agreement. Now it says the Splunk web interface is available here. However, I don't have DNS set up, so we will have to access it by the IP address. So let's see what that is. And it's 172.16.182.142. Let me bring up a browser. And there it is. Let's log in for the first time. Admin and change me. Change the password. Skip all of this. Now remember, the first thing we do on a heavy forwarder is go to Settings, Licensing, Change License Group, Forwarder License, Save. And it'll make us restart the Splunk server, that's fine. Log in again. Now we want to go to Settings, Forwarding and Receiving, Configure Forwarding, Add New. Our host machine is, let's check the IP, 172.16.182.150. And 999.7. Okay, everything's enabled, looks good. Now, no data is being forwarded on this heavy forwarder yet, because we have to explicitly monitor or upload a file or in some way add data to this forwarder. So let's click on Add Data, and let's choose Monitor. And let's say there's a specific directory on this Linux machine that we want to monitor and then forward on to our search head. So Files and Directory, let's browse. As you notice, this is now a Linux file system. And let's do the same thing we did with our universal forwarder. Let's go to var, and we'll just monitor that whole directory. And the host, let's make the host metadata value Ubuntu heavy so that we can identify it more easily in our search head. Review, done. And let's add one more directory just to make sure, just in case there is nothing actually in that var directory. So monitor, files and directories. And let's monitor this sys and kernel directory. That could be important, and it could also have a lot of data which we're interested in. Click next. Let's do Ubuntu server heavy and sys. And notice something here. When we try to search directly on a heavy forwarder, we get all of these licensing errors. Because remember, on a heavy forwarder with a forwarding license, you cannot search. You have to use the Splunk search header indexer to which it is forwarding. So let's go back to our Splunk search head. Let's refresh it. And latest event now. This is good news. Click on Data Summary. There it is, Ubuntu Heavy and Ubuntu Heavy Sys. And Sys, oh, this one has a lot more data. Awesome. Okay, so now let's put that away for just a minute, and we'll install a heavy forwarder on our Windows machine. Again, we're just going to go to Splunk.com. Click on the green Free Splunk button. download Splunk Enterprise. And for this, we want the MSI. It'll make us log in, of course. And we'll save that. And we'll simply go to our downloads folder. And there it is. We'll run the installer. Okay, once it's done installing, we'll leave that box ticked, launch browser with Splunk Enterprise. And since the rest of this is going to be pretty much exactly like the Linux installation and setup, I'm going to speed up the process. I'm going to put the steps I'm going through on the left side of your screen there. So first step is add the forwarding license. Restart, log in again, and set up forwarding in the exact same way. And monitor or upload some data. And we're finished installing a heavy forwarder on Linux and on Windows. And just to reiterate, installing a heavy forwarder on Mac is essentially the same as installing a heavy forwarder on Windows. I really appreciate you joining me in this segment, and I'm really excited to see you in the next segment.